Hey, listen, Brother Love, it seems as if we have a special guest who is calling into the show tonight. Caller, you're on live with Brother Love and Greg Jackson. Let's talk about it. How you doing this evening, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Not too bad. That sounds like our good friend, Pastor Gray. How you doing?
I'm blessed and highly favored. How are you, sir?
Oh, man, no complaints, Pastor Gray. So what do we do what is the honor of this call for tonight?
You're a mess. You know I love y'all. Both y'all looking good, too. Y'all sharp and fat. I mean, I did chuckle and laugh about the fact y'all got to talk about some golf, but y'all ain't never invited class to come out there and hang out with y'all. But I ain't going to mess with y'all. You know, anytime y'all get ready, just let me know. Now, I told you I had a couple other things. Hopefully I ain't holding up.
No, you got it. Come on with it.
Yeah, because I think that I want to go back to something that was raised in relations to the recent conversation about the young lady who was on Miss Knowles. And I really, really am concerned about what's going to happen on Wednesday. I think we're really leaning towards trying to believe that something's going to set off for us to hear a response or get a verdict. And I'm really concerned about our people. I think there's some kind of way in the midst of your conversation tonight, as you're talking to the community, please encourage them to know how to respond in kind. There's going to be a response. Let's face it. If the verdict comes out that the brother is guilty, and he ought to be guilty, no ifs, ands, buts about that, I say that loudly and without hesitation. But if persons who are on the other side who have not yet, there's a book called, and I try to tell everybody, read this book, White Too Long by Robert Jones. I mean, I appreciate it. Joel Hunter and I, we did an interview with Robert Jones because it's innate within people who don't look like us to really believe some foolishness through Scripture, because the Southern Baptist Church, the evangelical churches that some of our people find themselves going to, was founded on segregation and racism. And consequently, it's perpetuated in their hearts to believe that we are not human, that we are subhuman. And that kind of mess has perpetuated even to people moving from the Klan to being in charge of the police departments in the South and in other areas. And so there's a concern that I have that says when this person is convicted, and ought to be convicted, that you're going to have a response from them. And if it does not come back the way we think it ought to be based on all evidence, then we ourselves got to be prepared to respond without trying to destroy our own community.
Yeah,
because most of the times when we act up, we don't act up. we act up in our own neighborhood.
Yeah. And Pastor Gray, I'm glad that you called in, because Greg and I are going to take you into this next segment. And this next segment is all about the response to what may take place tomorrow or the day after. And so are you willing to continue to lend your voice from a leadership perspective that we need to talk about? There's a way to have your freedom of speech. There's a way to peacefully protest. And those are the kind of conversations. And I got to go ahead, Greg, and give some credit to Chief Orlando Rolon.
Yeah.
I mean, these conversations are taking place right now, and we need to make sure those community leaders are the ones that are stepping up to say to people just the same things that you're saying right now, that we need to handle ourselves appropriately.
Here are two things, Pastor Gray, and I hope you have a few minutes because you have tapped into a topic that we actually were going to hit on tonight, and I'm glad that you're on the line. But here's two things. One is a comment, one is a question. The comment is this. I think that a lot of folks are going to be are not going to be happy even with the conviction when they realize that the sentencing for the crimes that Derek Chauvin is being charged with, that at the very least he will be in prison for 2.5 years, and at the very most he will be in prison for 12.5 years. And so at the end of a 12-year period, and possibly less, because this is going to be a state sentencing, which means that there is a opportunity for him to get out early. He may not be in jail for more than a decade. And I think that that's going to anger folks when they realize that that is a very real possibility, or that is the actual fact that he's not going to be in prison for the remainder of his life, even if convicted of the highest of these crimes. But the question that I have for you, Pastor Gray, and I know that you follow politics, just as much as Brother Love and I do, but the recent passage of House Bill 1 that was actually passed and signed into law today by Governor DeSantis, what do you think, or how do you think that that is going to affect, and HB 1 is the anti-riot bill, how do you think that's going to affect individuals' ability to express their feelings about what may take place on Wednesday or later on this week?
I don't think you and I both know that when it comes down to issues of the heart, when it comes down to our people, you ain't gonna stop that. There's nowhere in the world you're gonna stop that. What has to be done, and I think a part of the Constitution gives us a right for peaceful protest. I think the words are riots. I think that's the key word we have to focus in on. I don't think me or Pastor McCray, or those of us who work at AACCC, and those of us who have a social consciousness, even those persons who are engaged in Black Lives Matter, I don't think any of us are trying to create a riot. We are trying to advance a voice and to protest peacefully. That's the agenda. And as you stated earlier, when you start talking about our young people who basically have an idea of, I would always say, daring and what's next, well, we've got to help to see how to move into what's next in this context without it being a riot. As long as we can keep it from being a riot, I think we're okay. And I'm not mad at that document because I don't want a riot, because riots are on the other side.
Correct.
Riots. It just ain't black folk trying to create riots. You got other folk creating riots more so than us. So when you come down to that, I think that's great. But then you cannot legislate against peaceful protest. That we cannot address the issue at hand, and that's the thing we have to master at this time. How can we address our issues without it turning into a riot?
And that's the kind of conversation, man, we have to continue to have. But again, I got to refer back to Pastor Gray. I got to talk about Chief Roland. Bishop McCray. Craig, these are the conversations that the community need to hear. How do you conduct yourselves in a way that you're going to get the message across that it's not all right in terms of the level of use of force without crossing that line?
Well, but I think it also comes to the leadership in the community, and the one thing that I like about Orlando, I am a transplant to Orlando, as you are, Brother Love, and Pastor Gray. I know that you are a transplant to Orlando also, but the thing that I love about Orlando that I think that you all can both agree with is the fact that when folks come together in Orlando, they come together and things can get done, and it can be done in a peaceful way, as we have seen from this past summer. There were a lot of things that could have exploded and turned into a Minnesota or an Oregon or the other places where we saw violent protests and buildings and things being burnt and police stations being burnt. But because of the leadership and the faith-based community that works hand in hand with law enforcement on a lot of issues, I think that we can quelch a lot of the negative aspects of peaceful protests that we're seeing turn awry in other areas.
And also, great, not to mention you have Bishop McCray, who is the president of the AACCC. We have Pastor Gray that's on air with us, and he's the vice president of the AACCC. And that organization has influence, Greg, community-based influence.
Was that the intent when you first got here, Pastor Gray? Did you envision this when you first got here, having that type of influence?
No, I did not. I'll be honest with you. That was not where my mind was. But over time, when you start seeing the direction that it was going, it calls for us to, step up to the plate based upon what I understood the initial inception of the AACCC was founded, the principles are founded upon. And what the Bible says a number of times, y'all know I got to go to it, do not lose heart. In essence, there are so many times that people throw things at you that's designed to cause you to shrink, to cause you to almost want to give up. But my grandmama used to make this statement: the devil is a liar. And we got to basically go to work and also be prepared to fight it now. But we got to start the discussion on the strategies to use just in case. See, that we can't. If you got a whole Republican up there in Tallahassee, they all they're gonna do all they can. We can say all we want, but we're gonna say it. But then let's come back and strategically find a way. Well, if Souls to the Polls used to be on Sunday, Souls to the Polls going to be on Wednesday. Bible study night. We're going to take over Bible study. We got to start strategically finding new ways to still do what we do and have the impact we have and not shrink even when the enemy is trying to block you.
And Pastor Gray, you know, you and I, man, I tell you, we go back, and I appreciate you taking me under your wing. But you know, your good friend, and you know this, I don't have to say it to you, and I'd be remiss if I did not say it. Your good friend behind the mic is a Republican, but you know, my heart is what speaks for me.
He's talking about himself now, Pastor Gray. He's talking about your good friend Greg Jackson.
He knows what I'm talking about. He knows what I'm talking about. So you know, I just had to speak to my heart.
Hold it now. Rod, hold it, brother. Hold it now. Let's understand and let's be clear. If there was not the quote-unquote change that really transpired regarding Truman letting black folk into the military, all black folk before that time frame were Republicans. We all got to tell the truth.
You're right.
I ain't mad
You're
at
right.
you being all of us Republicans. We're Republicans primarily because of Abraham Lincoln. But when you had, because everything that was in the South was all Democrat. You know, I get, you know, it hurts me at times when folks start saying, well, you know, black folk are supposed to be Democrat. No, we were initially Republicans.
That's right.
But when them people who don't look like us, who's a part of the Klan, got mad when they started seeing the civil support of black folk through the Democratic Party, all of a sudden they switched and went Republican. And all the black folk left the Republican Party and went Democrat. So if we were to tell the truth about how we got over here and stop keeping that undercover, we wouldn't have no problem. But you know and I know that them people up there in Tallahassee who don't look like you, who Republicans.
That's my friend, Greg. I knew he was gonna go there. Yeah. But you know what? Hey, but with Pastor Gray, I will say this about him, Greg. He has no problem sitting down at the table, and we've had this conversation before. Speaker Sprouls, Chris Sprouls, who's the House Speaker right now. This is a cat, man, who I've had the opportunity to sit down, man, and have some conversations. This is the same guy that Pastor Gray, Bishop McCray are saying, let's pull a chair up to the table and have these kind of conversations. So, Greg, this is my brother, and I love him, man. He gonna tell you how it is, and I'm glad that he did that, though. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
I love y'all. Y'all have a great night. I appreciate y'all letting me have an opportunity to chime in, and I'm enjoying the conversation. Y'all keep up the good work. Proud of both of you, and get me on the golf course soon.
Hey, Pastor, we appreciate you,
Pastor Gray. Thank you, sir.
Hey, for those of you that are listening, that was the pastor Terence Gray. That is the senior pastor over at St. Mark AME Church. And when I tell you, hey, Greg, that's a bad brother.
Oh, yeah, no
doubt. He
doubt.
speaks his mind.
No doubt,
but you know what? He does just like this show does. And Greg, at the end of the day, he gets results.
That's right. Absolutely.